The Chosen Undead vs. The Last Dragonborn is Death Battle's second episode of Season 10. Or I guess I should call it Dark Souls vs. Skyrim. No, wait. The YouTube title is reversed to be Skyrim vs. Dark Souls. Can we please agree on what the title of the episode is? Never mind. Fuck it. This episode is really good. Liam is officially 2 for 2 when it comes to his Passion Project episodes, knocking it out of the park in terms of quality. And I could not be happier about that fact. This episode is dripping with love and respect for the combatants and their respective games at every turn, to the point where it's hard to know where to start when talking about its many great qualities. Okay, that's a lie. I know I should start with the analyses. I think they're both pretty good. High fantasy is one of my favorite genres of fiction in general, so I always love hearing about characters from that niche on Death Battle. In fact, the start of the Chosen Undead's analysis is one of my favorites the show has ever done. Wiz's monologue about the gothic wasteland that is Dark Souls' world is so gripping and instantly gets me excited to learn more about it. And then they play a toilet flushing sound without interruption and portray the Chosen Undead as a masochist in my least favorite joke of the episode by a country mile. Why can't we ever just have nice things? Actually, those are just two examples of my biggest problem with the episode. Most of the non-meta humor really misses the mark for me. I quite like the jokes that reference aspects of the games that are in-jokes with their fans, like the high ground adjacent bit about dodge rolls and references to Skyrim's modding community. But original material like Spicy Sunny D and the Master Good Boy had me fairly stone-faced. The cutaways are hit and miss as well. Chosen Undeads doesn't really have a punchline outside of summoning Jocelyn to do the lore dumping, whereas Dragonborn's cutaway implies Wiz sold his soul to pay off his student loans. That's pretty funny, and it was a relief to not have the joke be the obvious low-hanging fruit of Boomsig doing the Fuz Roda. Even if he kind of does it anyway, but let's not worry about that. Another smaller issue I had with the episode is the editing, which is a bit of a step down from Ant-Man vs. Adam before it. The weird pauses in the royalty-free music meant to accentuate moments of levity especially felt very clunky. Also, the exact same animation for the Dark Souls comic panel about undead not needing souls is used twice, which really jumped out at me for some reason. That's not to say it didn't have good moments, though. The old parchment panels look nice, and the funny vanish noise playing when the Dragonborn steals a helmet made me chuckle. Also, the animation for the calc text was consistently well done. And yeah, those are my only complaints. Totally subjective elements and some minor nitpicks. I know I said this before, but it bears repeating just how much of Liam's passion is tangible in the analyses, which lifts both above any of the small problems I can bring up to make this review seem balanced and not just an unbridled praise. And speaking of an unbridled praise, hey, how about that fight, huh? I first want to talk about the setup for the fight. I didn't know shit about Dark Souls lore going into this episode, so I was totally lost on why the Chosen Undead and the Dragonborn were fighting at first. I was like, who are these voices? Why do they sound almost exactly the same in a way that makes it hard to tell which is talking? Why is the Dragonborn apparently listening to some random guy telling him to stop the Chosen Undead? But nah, fuck that shit. I was a big stupid idiot, and this is actually one of the most layered setups for a death battle I can think of in recent seasons. You see, in case you didn't already know, these voices are Kingseeker Frompt and Darkstalker Kath, the two snake guys mentioned in the Chosen Undead cutaway. They're both voiced by the same guy in the original game, so they got Tom Schalk to voice them both for the episode, which is why they sound the same. But more importantly, thanks to Liam's notes in the episode commentary and a random YouTube comment I saw, I realized that this whole setup is basically riffing on cut content from Dark Souls. Oscar, the knight who sets the Chosen Undead free from the asylum, was originally supposed to play a bigger role in the games, siding with either Frompt or Kath depending on which one the player decides to follow. So, for example, if you followed Frompt and sought to link the first flame, Oscar would have sided with Kath and sought to let it die out by stopping you. Sound familiar at all? The Dragonborn is basically replacing Oscar in this scenario from the game, which is such a fucking cool way to give your fight setup narrative meaning that is deeply rooted in the source material. My hat goes off to Liam for coming up with this scenario. It makes the Chosen Undead and the Dragonborn feel more like they were plucked right out of their games than a lot of other death battles managed to pull off with their combatants. And bear in mind, all of those compliments are just about the setup. A lesser episode would struggle to live up to the bar set by such a clever opening, but I am happy to report that this is no lesser episode. I was a bit worried in the week leading to the episode's release because the preview of the animation seemed kind of stiff, but I waited to see if it would pick up after the cutoff. And holy shit, Bond vs. Wick wishes it picked up after what was shown in the preview this much. This fight feels dramatic and impactful in a way that feels effortless, owing in large part to how much they use for each fighter. Let's run things down from the top before I get too carried away. First, even before the action, we get this dope as hell shot of the Dragonborn reflected in the Chosen Undead's helmet, which I somehow didn't notice until I saw it in the storyboards, so shame on me, honestly. We get the first shout of the fight to start things off, and while I at first found Dragonborn's lip syncing to seem weirdly off, it has since become a meme in my friend group, so I can safely say that it is now peak comedy. Well played, animators. We get some neatly choreographed sword fighting here as Dragonborn capitalizes on his Fus Roda, putting the Chosen Undead on the back foot, where we first get a taste of the awesome sound design this fight has to offer. It boasts some really satisfying hits for the sword strokes and shield bashes, selling the impact of every attack. Then we get to the obligatory roll spam of the fight, which I found to be pretty amusing. You might think it'd feel stale since they made a whole song and dance out of it in the analysis, but it actually builds on that by pairing it with the hold forward and swing nature of Skyrim's combat, making for a charming and funny scene that still gets a smirk out of me on rewatches. Now we start seeing more weapons outside of swords and shields, and while I'm not sure where Chosen Undead had the time to pull out Smo's hammer in the 6 frames it's been since we saw him roll away with his sword in hand, I don't care to nitpick that too much since we get the epic funny arrow to the knee joke right after it. I appreciate that the crew chose to save this meme for the fight. It really caught me by surprise on my first watch. But then the Chosen Undead does his weird moan thing, which, while I know it's the actual sound heard upon death in Dark Souls, it has been forever tainted in my mind by the chosen masochist getting sexually aroused by agonizing pain, so that's great. Can you tell I'm being sarcastic? I really hope so. You know what's genuinely a great moment, though? Dragonborn using his slow time shout to easily sidestep a shot from Goff's great bow, then seeming to speed over to Chosen Undead and running him through with his sword. I love how the speed of the attack is framed through the Chosen Undead's eyes here. It makes for a cool POV shot that we usually don't see too much of on Death Battle. Then the Dragonborn removes the Chosen Undead's soul, and he dies. Easy win, right? Lol, no, sorry mate, the player hasn't rage quitted this boss just yet. They trade magic before Chosen Undead gets in close for some more really meaty hits, and Dragonborn responds by calling in a dragon that roars like Venusaur did while dying in the Pokemon Battle Royale, which made me do the wildest double take. I don't care if that sound actually originates from Skyrim dragons. To me it is Venusaur's death throes and I will never hear otherwise. Speaking of death throes, hey, the Chosen Undead is looking more like the Chosen Dead right here. Please laugh, oh god, I need validation. Dragonborn heals up while he has the chance, and Clifford the Big Red Dragon gets a cool nose piercing courtesy of Goff's great bow upon Chosen Undead's next revival. And then we're treated to this awesome moment where Dragonborn uses his Storm Call shout to summon a thunderstorm over the arena. And how does the Chosen Undead respond? Well, he grabs the lightning out of the air and turns it into his lightning spear attack to clash with the Dragonborn's electricity. God, that shit is so fucking cool. Injected directly into my veins. I need it! And now we're in the endgame. Lightning continues to shake the battlefield while the Chosen Undead equips the Moonlight Greatsword and the Dragonborn takes up Dawnbreaker. And at this point, I really can't go any further without addressing how epic the score sounds here, rising in volume as they charge toward each other for a final sword duel. Fireborn is a downright amazing song, with Brandon Yates putting together some incredible instrumental sounds while the fan chorus comes together in immaculate harmony. The lyrics make it feel like the people of Lordran and Skyrim are calling out to the Chosen Undead and the Dragonborn, chanting for their heroes to save them amidst gloriously epic horns and tragic strings, which feel like they were pulled straight out of a Soulsborne soundtrack. If the sponsor segment didn't do enough of a good job of convincing you to commission Yates, this track should be all the proof you need that the man has his job down to a finely tuned science. I could go on, but I really need to start wrapping this up before the music nerd within me takes over completely. We get some more cool swordplay interspersed with some sword beams before the Helm of Silence shuts down the Fus Roda, in a moment that was both easy to see coming and awesome. The way it mutes the impacts of their blades is such a cool effect. And the sound of Dawnbreaker stabbing through Chosen Undead reminded me of what it sounds like when you take damage in Hollow Knight, which put a big dumb smile on my face. Chosen Undead's not done yet though. He pulls himself into the blade and grabs Dragonborn by the throat, telling him to get ready to die with a line delivery that sells how serious he is despite the grievous injury he's pushing through. And surprise, surprise, Liam did this line, making yet another giant W for him to take from this episode as if he didn't have enough already. However, I would have liked for them to linger on the Dragonborn getting strangled a bit more than they did. Maybe have him choke and struggle while Chosen Undead says his one and only line. As is, it feels like the tenacity of this final gambit is discarded too quickly for it to sink in and make the viewer second guess who the winner will be. But even still, this next moment where Dragonborn stabs Chosen Undead through the throat and strains to rip it out while his foe fights against him is a great final hit. Then Chosen Undead manages to link the fire before dying, Dragonborn dispels it with a final Fus for Da, and the fight's over. This final scene can be a little confusing as to who won on first watch, but it does display how utterly superior Dragonborn is to even the strongest concepts in Dark Souls, which is good cohesion with the conclusion's findings. Personally, I think they did a good job balancing their reasoning of the Chosen Undead eventually losing so much that they would go hollow with how they chose to end the fight. After all, once the first flame was blasted away, it's not like the Chosen Undead would have been able to come back, so it's a fitting way to end the fight without it dragging on too long. Their emphasis on the lore in the conclusion also just makes me really happy for some reason. I guess it feels like a final way for the passion the team had for this match to shine through, by fully appreciating the worlds that FromSoft and Bethesda created in order to fully comprehend what they were both capable of. Man, what else is there for me to say here? I've heaped more than my fair share of compliments on this episode at this point, and for the few small issues I can pick out from it, I feel like I'm looking for needles in a haystack to do so. This was everything I could have wanted from this matchup and so much more. An easy 9 out of 10 score from me. Mr. Swan, you have my eternal respect. Now to look ahead to the next episode, which is hardly worth recognizing for the matchup because it's my boy Jukum's first episode as a death battle researcher. He's a big Hunter x Hunter fan and I've been so excited to see his handiwork finally appear on the show, so I'm looking forward to this one for that reason alone. It's too bad it's not another passion of his like Lucina vs. Grovile, since I'm indifferent to Hunter x Hunter and I literally didn't even know who Misaka was when I first saw this, but oh well, I'll take what I can get. Whew, this reveal felt like it took me a lot longer to get through than Ant-Man vs. Atom. I think that's mainly because I had to figure out how to format all the things I wanted to say without just shouting about how cool everything was ad nauseum. Sorry if this review felt less concise than the last one. I'll try to improve on writing my scripts out for these as Season 10 progresses. But if you've made it this far in the video, I can assume you're not bothered by any of that, so let me say to you, thanks very much for watching. My Skyrim vs. Dark Souls reaction will be linked in the description just like last time, so go watch that now that we're done here. And even though I probably don't need to tell you this, considering how much smaller I am in comparison, go check out Biff and Nem's reviews when they come out. Until next time. Wait, shit, I forgot to make a joke about Alduin being the funny Bruno Mars dragon. Damn it, what have I done?
I gotta come, no girls,